Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a pretty massive concept, how influence, leadership, and huge networks are actually built from the ground up. We're going to zoom way out and look at 4 wildly different organizational blueprints to see exactly how communities are built, nurtured, and physically brought together.
Now, right off the bat, you're probably wondering, what on earth do a historic fraternity, a tech startup pitch, and a massive Malaysian exhibition hall have in common? I know, it sounds like the setup to a weird riddle, right? But stick with me, because the hidden connective tissue here is actually really profound.
The key to unlocking this whole thing is the concept of alpha. You know, the first, the beginning, the primary element in a system. It's this recurring motif that serves as the absolute foundation for building really ambitious communities. Whether we're talking about the start of a lifelong brotherhood or the seed stage of a billion-dollar company, every massive network starts with an alpha blueprint.
Which brings us to Phase 1, the legacy network. Let's kick things off by looking at the deeply human foundation of a legacy network, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Founded way back in 1906 at Cornell University, it's the oldest intercollegiate Black Greek letter fraternity. And honestly, it is a total masterclass in how qualitative values build a quantitative powerhouse over time. Looking at their imagery rooted in the Great Sphinx, you can just feel the weight of their history. For over a century, they've stood right at the intersection of civil rights advocacy and lifelong leadership development.
So how does a century-old foundation translate into modern influence? Take a look at these partnerships. We're talking massive corporate giants here. Macy's, JP Morgan Chase, Amazon. And these corporations, they aren't just slapping their logos on a banner to sponsor an event. They're making a highly strategic investment in a multi-generational talent pipeline. They get direct access to everyone from early career professionals to seasoned, highly influential decision-makers.
And the sheer scale of that talent pool? It's staggering. That corporate investment taps into a network of over 250,000 initiated members. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. That's enough people to fill several major stadiums. It's a massive, deeply trusted global footprint. By mobilizing a brotherhood of 250,000 people, this network actively drives economic mobility, small business growth, and civic engagement all over the world.
Which brings us to a really fascinating reality. How do abstract, high-level ideals like brotherhood and scholarship actually manifest in the physical world? Well, when 250,000 members need to get together, they require massive regional and general conventions. The network quite literally has to take up physical space on a convention center floor to lay the groundwork for real-time human connection. But that raises a pretty good question. How do new ideas, or even new members, actually break into a massive network like this in the first place?
That leads us right into Phase 2, the incubation stage.
Let's pivot and see how a completely different industry evaluates potential. Over at the massive Web Summit Tech Conference, they actually use the term alpha as a very specific designation. In their ecosystem, alpha is the track specifically for early-stage startups with outstanding potential. We're talking pre-investment companies, or those operating with under $1 million in funding. These are founders at the very beginning of their journey, desperate to connect with their first major investors.
To really grasp the scale of this gathering and the sheer volume of ideas trying to force their way into the network, get a load of this metric from their 2022 event. Out of 17,892 startups that applied, only about 2,300 were actually selected to go to Lisbon. That is an incredibly tight funnel. So how in the world do they filter this chaotic, massive network of hopefuls down to a curated group?
Well, the secret sauce is their strict 4-step assessment process. They aren't just guessing here. First, they look at growth potential. Are you actually targeting a global market? Second, impact. Are you relevant to the people attending? Third, product and team. Do you have a legit working prototype and the industry chops to back it up? And finally, pitch quality. They strictly evaluate your readiness to actually get out there and work a crowd. It's a masterclass in engineering a high-value community from scratch. Honestly, it kind of makes you rethink your own criteria for the networks you're building, doesn't it?
Okay, moving on to Phase 3, the global gathering. So once these massive legacy networks are established or thousands of startup ideas are incubated, they absolutely need a physical space to manifest. Where does all this influence actually live? Take a look at these 2 massive events scheduled for Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in 2026. On one side, you've got the Alpha Asia Pacific Conference, bringing our Alpha theme full circle, which aims to mobilize Christian leaders for workplace evangelism. And on the other side, OTC Asia, a highly technical industrial offshore energy convention. 2 radically different missions.
But here's the thing.
Regardless of whether attendees are discussing church planting or arguing about subsea digitalization and offshore drilling, they share one massive commonality. Safely orchestrating thousands of human footprints across a shared floor space requires a mind-bogglingly complex physical blueprint. All those lofty, world-changing ideals, yeah, they don't mean a thing if the gritty physical space fails.
Let's dive into the anatomy of an exhibition.
Let's zoom in on what that physical blueprint actually looks like. This is where the abstract concept of networking slams right into cold, hard architecture. While the Web Summit measures success in pitch quality, an event like OTC Asia measures it in strict physical realities. Take this hyper-specific parameter, a strict 3,000 millimeter ceiling height limit for plasma glass. You simply can't build a network of energy professionals if someone's booth is violating the structural limits of the convention hall.
I actually love this detail. Amidst all our high-level talk and this explainer about legacy, global influence, and multi-generational pipelines, a successful gathering ultimately comes down to dry, incredibly rigid rules exactly like this one: max high structure 3.0 meters and the setback 1.0 meter from the wall. It's beautifully mundane, but it is literally the structure that allows the ecosystem to function.
A functioning network needs literal, physical structure plotted meticulously through the space. We're talking about mapping out fire hose reels, door controllers, SOIS boards, and fire alarms. You have to clearly mark the non-build-up areas. You need utility rooms and fire breaks just to keep the ecosystem breathing safely. Without these precise, unyielding constraints, the whole gathering just collapses.
Which brings us to our final section, building your own blueprint.
Let's bring all these distinct case studies together and look at the big picture. We've seen how influence is architected from the ground up, moving all the way from the philosophical down to the highly practical. And what we've discovered is that building an influential community requires two distinct pillars. You need the qualitative network, the deeply felt mission of an Alpha Phi Alpha brotherhood, or the innovative spark of a Web Summit pitch. But you also absolutely require the quantitative blueprint. The sheer volume of 250,000 members, the strict funding limits, and those unyielding 3,000 millimeter architectural constraints of a massive convention hall.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought to reflect on today. Knowing that real, lasting influence requires both a powerful mission and meticulous physical execution, what does your blueprint for connection look like? Thanks for exploring these blueprints with me, and I'll see you in the next explainer.